Hello, my viewers and listeners. How are you today? I'm fine. This is Ikram. In this video lesson, we will learn about an advice. Okay, as you see from the, from the information given in the video, it is underlined in the red line says advice. Okay, so we will see about an advice. In this unit, we will see 3 points briefly related to an advice. The first one, simply we will define what an advice is. Okay, secondly, we will see ways of giving advice. Then we will see as a last model conversation that shows ways of giving advice to others. Okay, ways of giving advice to others. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe it. Okay, don't forget to subscribe it, like it, and share it. And I would like to once again to tell to your friends to see this video if they want to improve their English language skill. Okay, now let's see the lesson. First, what is an advice? Okay, what is an advice? An advice is simply an opinion or suggestion about what someone else should do. Okay, it's an opinion or suggestion about what someone should do, or we can say a recommendation regarding decision. Okay, it's a recommendation regarding decision or course of conduct. This is simple dictionary definition of an advice. Okay, so there are various life situations that needs a decision, and sometimes we don't know which decision is the right decision. Okay, so we will ask the advice of others. Okay, we will ask the advice of others. So in English, there are so many ways. Okay, and in this video lesson we will focus on the most common, as usual. Okay, the most common ways of asking an advice. Okay, and here are the list. Okay, some ways of asking for an advice. The first one, as you see, what do you advise me to dash, it says. So you can put next to simply a verb. Okay, and a verb. What do you advise me to do? Okay, this is possible. Simply putting do. What do you advise me to do? What do you recommend me to do? Okay, this is also another way of asking an advice. See, this is simple asking. Could you give me some advice about dash then ing? So in this dash you can put the verb. You see, could you give me some advice about learning English? Could you give me some advice about listening in English? Okay, so this is how we construct to ask for an advice. And fourthly, you can use where can I. Okay, where can I get this information? So you are looking for a solution, an advice, okay, or a suggestion. And finally, where should I is also another beginning phrase that we use to ask for an advice. Where should I? Where should I go, for instance? Where should I live? Where should I buy? Okay, so this is ways of asking an advice. Okay, these are not the whole, okay, but these are very common ways of asking an advice in English. Now let's come to the second lesson part. This is ways of giving an advice. Okay, this is ways of giving an advice. Okay, so there are a number of options. Okay, we will see them, all of them, and we will see them quickly. Okay, ways of giving an advice. Okay, these are the given options for the question raised in the first part. Okay, what should I do? Where should I go? These are possible questions, but the answer, or when we give advice for others, we will start using this expressions and phrases. Okay, we will start. I would advise you to do this, okay, or that. You can complete the dashes using your own advice, and usually verbs after the preposition to. I would advise you to dash, or you can say I would recommend you to do this or do that. Okay, dash. I would recommend you. That's the recommendation, is a kind of advice. And the third one is different. You see, why don't you? Okay, why don't you? It's a way of asking and giving at the same time an advice. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Okay. And the fourth one is also it's a conditional. It's a hypothetical way of giving okay, an advice for others. You see, if I were you, I would do this, which means if I'm in your place, okay, or if I'm in your shoes, okay, if I'm representing you, that is the hypothetical, okay, the hypothetical way of giving an advice, okay. And I think you should dash, okay, I think you should dash. That is opinion as well as, you know, an advice. I think you should study, I think you should tell the truth, something like that, okay. And if you take my advice, okay, if you when you feel that he is looking for an advice from you, you can say, if you take my advice, you will do this or you will do that. I advise you to read. This is advice, as a verb here is give, okay. I advise you to do this. And similarly, if I were you, I wouldn't, okay. The first if I were you given in the top here, it is hypothetical but positive. Here, hypothetical and negative, okay. If I were you, I wouldn't do that, okay. If I were you, I wouldn't do that, I wouldn't do this, okay. This is again conditional, hypothetical, negative. So this is possible to give advice in this way. And I don't think you should. I don't think you should. You should do this, okay. And this is also another way of giving an advice. You had better not. This is also a possible way of beginning an advice in such a way. You had better not to smoke. You had better not see, okay. And I advise you not to. This is also a way of giving an advice for others. Don't smoke, don't tell, don't say, possible ways of, you know, giving an advice, okay. So these are again some of the ways of giving, you know, advice, okay. And as I said, this is not the whole, but these are the most common ways of giving an advice for your friend or for your family members or for your relatives. If they ask you, you can start giving your advice in this way, okay. You can start giving advice in this way. Now let's see model conversation that shows, okay, ways of asking an advice and giving an advice, okay. So let's see a conversation. The first one, you see, model conversation, the first one, it is a dialogue between Mulu and Balai, okay. It's a dialogue between Mulu and Balai, okay. Mulu and Balai. So Mulu said what? Look, this is model. I have got a terrible cold, you know, a terrible cold, okay. It's a bad cold. So Balai give him, you know, an advice. If you have a terrible cold, this is his advice. Why don't you stay at home, okay. Okay, it's better to stay at home. That's giving an advice for Mulu. why don't you stay at home? If you got a terrible cold, you see, he advised him, why don't you stay at home? Okay, why don't you stay at home? It is the suggestion, okay, it is an advice that it's better to stay at home. Now let's come to the second conversation, okay. This is giving advice to a sick person, giving advice to a sick person, okay. So someone is sick and he's asking for an advice, so the person is giving an advice to the sick person. Look, the dialogue between Mulu and Balai, okay. Again, hello Balai, how are you? Balai said, not very well, I have got a heart attack, okay. This is the sickness, okay. This is a sickness. I have got a heart attack. And Mulu said, oh, I'm sorry, but why don't you go to the hospital? Why don't you go to hospital? You see, why don't you go to hospital? This is you know, the underlying part. Why don't you go to hospital is a way of giving an advice, okay. Why don't you go to hospital? But I said, which hospital would you recommend me to go? Which hospital? Okay, he need a recommendation, which is again a suggestion, okay, way of asking a question. Which hospital would you recommend me to go? Would you recommend me to go? Then he gave him advice. Muru gave him an advice. I advise you to go to the Black Lion Hospital. I advise you, this is giving an advice, you see. I advise you to go to the Black Lion Hospital. Balai said, what? Do you think I can get a good treatment there? Do you think I can get a good treatment there? Yes, of course. There are many heart specialists, okay? There are many heart specialists at the Black Lion Hospital. There are many heart specialists at okay, the Black Lion Hospital. Okay, this is a way of giving advice to a sick person. As you see, the underlying part is, okay, it is a way. Why don't you go to hospital? This is giving advice. I advise you to go to the Black Lion Hospital. This is also an advice, okay. This is also an advice. Now let's see more. Let's see more on this topic. You see, finally, as you see, Balai said, what? Thank you very much for your advice. I will go tomorrow. Mulu said, it's my pleasure. Okay, it's my pleasure. Now let's see the third model conversation. Okay, it's looking for an advice where to learn English. Okay, he wants to learn English, but he doesn't know where to learn in English. An advice where to learn English language. Okay, look the dialogue again between Mulu and Balai. I want to learn speaking English. Okay, I want to learn speaking English. That's the need of Mulu. I want to learn speaking English. See, then Balai said, what? Then why don't you do? Why don't you do? That means giving a kind of advice. Why don't you do? What is your problem? My problem is that I don't know which language school to join. Okay, if I were you, okay, I would join the Grand International Language School. If I were you, I would join the Grand International Language School. So if I were you, I would join the Grand International School is the advice part. Okay, if I were you, if I'm in your position, that is what it means. Where is it? Okay, he is looking for the place. It's next to Arada post office. There is a landmark. You can't miss it. Okay, there is a landmark. You can miss it. You can't miss it. Okay, and so thank you for your advice. Well, I said you are welcome. Okay, this is also another way of giving an advice. Okay, another way of giving an advice. Now let's see the fourth conversation that shows, you know, an advice. Okay, asking an advice and giving an advice. Look again, it's a continuation of the dialogue between Muru and Balai, okay? Mulu and Balai. As you see, Mulu said what? I'm afraid I have had a terrible row with my husband. Row is a kind of conflict. Row means what? It's a conflict. So an argument, conflict. I'm afraid I have a terrible row. So there is a bad argument or conflict with my husband. What shall I do? That's Muru's question. You see, she needs an advice. What shall I do? It's a way of asking an advice. What shall I do? But I suggested what? I think you should apologize. You should apologize. This is a suggestion. That's a way of giving an advice. Oh, but I can't. It wasn't my fault. See, that's Muru's answer. Maybe, but I think you had better say it was your fault. This is also again, I think you had better say it was your fault is what? It is an advice. Okay, it is an advice. So guys, this is a lesson point. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe it. Don't forget to share it for your friends if they want to improve their English. And don't forget also, after listening this video, listen again and again and practice again and again. I hope you'll be better if you do it in this way. Okay, as usual, I would like to say thank you for listening and bye bye. Okay, I said bye bye.